It is a bloody hard time to be a PC gamer. It really is, unless, of course, you have a hell of a lot of money, because the latest and greatest technology truly is mind-bogglingly good, but it's also mind-bogglingly expensive. But we are about to see a little bit more competition in the market, which absolutely is a good thing. You see, on the graphics card front, the whole thing has been woeful lately. I mean, AMD are actually quite price competitive at lower points, but it's not really been like the big war between AMD and Intel in the CPU space, where we really have seen thermal envelopes and value be pushed to the limits by both companies. This is something I feel pretty keenly right now. I've been trying to work out a £700 gaming PC for my girlfriend's brother, and man, you really do have to make sacrifices for that. Sacrifices that really do just make picking up an Xbox or a PS5 look like a pretty damn good bang for the buck decision. Well, today we're going to dive into what you need to know about the PC hardware space. Of course, with the help of today's sponsor. Brilliant! Brilliant is the best way that you can learn new STEM fields, improve your prospects, and better yourself. And it's all via their fantastic site and app. And the first 200 to click my link will get 20% off. Now, the awesome thing is they teach via interactive quizzes with fun and curiosity inspiring problems, all in a way where you're learning by doing, where mistakes are fine and okay and fun. Now, I've been watching For All Mankind, and I've been keeping up with the Artemis program. And Real Engineering is one of my favorite channels on YouTube, which means it's a pretty damn good thing that Real Engineering have actually created a course on Brilliant, going through orbital mechanics, the engineering of rockets, and then the real meat of it, tether launchers. Because why not just throw your payload into space? Pretty damn cool. Even more so to actually understand how these things work. They do a simply incredible job of explaining difficult subjects, genuinely growing your mind. So straight up, like STEM skills, enrich your brain, they give you more powerful cognitive arms to deploy in your day-to-day life. So don't sponge in facts, learn by doing with brilliant.org/Bellular News, where the first 200 to click will get 20% off their annual subscription. Of course, Nvidia got off to a rather rocky start. I think they're essentially setting up a situation where ultimately then AMD are set up to be a savior, much like how many saw them whenever Ryzen first came onto the scene and gave Intel some serious competition. But amid all this craziness, we haven't even talked about the latest with the 4080 now that benchmarks and results are out from across the internet. And they're actually so bizarre that people are running these benchmarks and saying that actually in terms of performance for dollar, it makes more sense to buy a 4090, because surely the kind of price-insensitive consumer who's open to buying a 4080 would probably be able to stretch to a 4090. It's a bit bizarre. I mean, here from Tom's Hardware, all the tech advancements of the Ada Lovelace architecture with a price that's difficult to justify, right? In a typical generation, easy to recommend, but here's the problem with it. The 4080 is 25% cheaper, but it's 30% slower, meaning that Nvidia's maths literally does not even add up. In terms of how they position this product in the market, it is literally saying, you know, spend a bit less money and get a worse deal. Whereas usually in these industries, what happens is, as you spend more money, you get diminishing returns. Right now, if you get the current budget of the 4000 series, you're getting a worse deal than if you shell out for the full thing. Madness, I say. Madness. But the thing then is that this means there is massive room for competition, and this is where the seeming legends at AMD are coming in with the RX 7900 and XT GPUs, which may actually be able to justify this. And this would be pretty major because right now, less than 25% of the market is using something other than an Nvidia card. Nvidia's market share, I mean, look here between Intel, which, you know, that's not people running an Intel Arc. That's people obviously running, you know, the Intel integrated graphics. I mean, AMD, like even counting in their APUs, they're at 13.13%. So suffice to say, there is room for them to grow. Now then, let's talk about their new cards. This is where things could be exciting, and the excitement will kick off December 13th. Now, these are both designed to be flagship models for their product range. So if you look here, the XTX is $999, and the XT is $899 with TDPs of 355 watts and 300 watts respectively. So these are, sort of big beefy chunkers. That's definitely for sure. I mean, actually not literally, which is a really good selling point, but they are going to be sucking up plenty of juice. The thing is though, we're now in the absolute utter bizarre hellscape where we're sitting here celebrating a $900 or $1,000 card as actually being really good value competition in the market. Now, obviously, that's because these companies tend to release their greatest things first, right? You want to sell the biggest thing with the highest margin, then you want to roll out your budget option, then you want to roll out your budget option, and then you don't give us anything like a 750 Ti anymore because, I guess, screw us. I mean, there is like the 1660 Super, but man, nothing's really as good as the 750 Ti was for its day. But of course, in this new world, it's not just hardware, it's also software. We've got AMD FSR, which is basically their version of DLSS upscaling tech. That's rolling out into more games. The aim is for FSR 3 to come out in 2023, which seems to be doubling FPS, but possibly by doing DLSS 3 style frame insertion, which, yeah, does happen at the cost of a bit of input lag. But as has been tested by some groups like Digital Foundry and Linus Tech Tips, there are situations where it actually does seem like a relatively sensible thing to want to do. But basically the big thrust here is comparing the 7900 XTX with the 6950 XT, which is their current flagship. And those numbers are good. A solid 1.5 to 1.7x improvement in FPS, right? That's definitely good, especially when it comes to ray tracing operations as well. I don't know about you guys, but there's so many instances where, like, even if you have like a really good 2000 series card for Nvidia, ray tracing is just so expensive that it never makes sense to turn on. It at least seems that with these newer generations of cards, we may actually do it. Now, what was fun here, and what's quite good about, of course, the group over at Linus Tech Tips, is they have a lot of staff, and they, of course, have their labs team who are doing, a bit of the sort of thing that Stephen Burke and the people over at Gamers Nexus are doing. And overall, this is what they've seen when they basically took what AMD said at good faith and scaled the 6950 numbers up to an expectation for the 7900 XTX. And they essentially were seeing very close results. Now, flick on ray tracing, and yeah, so it's doing very good in the rasterizing performance, but definitely when it comes to ray tracing, Nvidia does appear to have, to have the edge. But definitely an improvement over their last thing. But the thing is, you have to remember the massive price difference between the 7900 XTX and the RTX 4090. Now, what we can do over here is take a look at the Thomas Hardware GPU benchmark hierarchy, where right now, 100% on this scale is the performance of the 4090, and it's comparing, everything else down there below that. And you do see that, the 4090 is just on top, right? Like, essentially, as far as any normal person's concerned, the 4090 has solved graphics for now. We can see the 4080 likely being a little bit below that, but the point basically is the AMD cards are not going to be too far behind, especially for most cases. And right now, most cases is 1080p. It does depend a bit in geographical region. I would say that perhaps in the United Kingdom, Germany, Sweden, France, the United States of America, you're going to be maybe seeing more 1440p because that just seems like the consumer spending is kind of like higher in those regions. But still, for 1440p, this stuff's going to be great. And there's even a really hilarious thing. The 4090 does not support DisplayPort 2.1. Now, this is not going to be a problem for any normal person, but it is funny that the less performant AMD flagship will actually support the more modern spec of DisplayPort. But then again, you're not going to need the upper end of what that DisplayPort does, unless you are a pretty damn specific use case. Now, where this is really going to matter, of course, is price. So, of course, as we know from Team Green, we're looking at $1599 and $1199 for the 4090 and the 4080. I guess who knows when the card that they unlaunched is going to appear and what name they will put on that. But when you look at AMD, $999, $899. These are pretty damn large savings, aren't they? I think for a lot of people, because the 7900 XTX gets you near as damn to the really good Nvidia performance at a significantly better price, like in most applications, and for most people, most applications probably still does mean rasterizing performance, not necessarily ray tracing performance, and it does well enough in ray tracing. I think they are going to be just fine. And I suppose you then look at this and you think, right, how are we going to trickle down? I suppose the hope there is that with these being flagships from AMD, that they will be a bit more performant. Now, the whole thing's rather interesting. I've been looking into a lot of computer stuff. So from what I understand, in terms of the manufacturing process, I think is Nvidia 4 nanometers now? Basically, Nvidia is like technically better, right? It's technically the more advanced manufacturing process, but it's also more expensive. But it also doesn't really seem like that particular manufacturing process. This is paraphrasing from the team at Linus Tech Tips. It's like there's a bunch of extra costs there that Nvidia might be invoking that they really don't need to, whereas in how they've constructed, I guess, their whole chipset, AMD are using some of the modern stuff, some of the less modern stuff. I mean, still modern, like, overall, but to the point where they can be a little bit more aggressive on pricing. And it's very interesting when you look at the market, right? And I think this is something that we're seeing really happen as, I suppose, income inequality becomes more and more of a thing. I mean, even if you look at the situation in the UK, like what happens when like 600 billion gets thrown into the market, and you know what happens, right? Well, people get that money, then they spend that money, but people who didn't need that money are hoovering up assets, right? Which is the thing that's really causing the whole wealth inequality bubble thing, to happen more and more. And, then we end up in this situation where as time goes on, I think the idea is that even if your slice of the pie gets smaller, the pie has gotten bigger, so you're still well off. But I think with, some wages not really matching up with inflation and issues like that, it's not a situation where your slice of the pie is getting smaller, but the pie is getting bigger. I think what's beginning to happen in a lot of our economies is your slice of the pie is getting smaller, and in a few cases, not that our economies like long-term are really contracting, but they're obviously facing issues. And I think this ultimately just means that there are enough people that Nvidia can sell every one of these cards that they can make, right? Like, they clearly must not be constrained by demand here, right? Because these cards sell out. Even during the whole GPU crisis caused by crypto and all of that, people were buying the cards from scalpers. Nvidia and AMD too, they all noticed that people will buy these scalped cards at markups. So if the customers are going to go and buy that, and it's a retailer or some bozo on eBay who's making the money, well, surely to a company like that, what they're going to think is, oh, okay, I think we can make a more expensive card. I think we can throw more margin in this bad boy. And I think that kind of thing is happening. I think obviously for Nvidia, like, look, would you rather be sitting there playing the commodity game, or would you rather be sitting there in the luxury game? Because I think we have this funny little thing going on where a lot of luxury brands are doing really well because the super rich are getting super rich, and maybe the brands that are doing well kind of on the other side of that coin is maybe the more, you could say the recession-proof brands like your McDonald's and things like that. And I just think that we're actually, because these are broader things that are happening in the economy, I think it therefore is quite sensible that these are things that are happening in the hardware economy, and this matters for PC gamers. It's fairly hard if you want to be at 1440p to really get some of the levels of value that I think you were able to get before, at least as benchmarked by the performance you'll get in the games of the time. And that's definitely hard for people. I love gaming. I don't like the idea that as time goes on, people are going to be priced out. What I think has happened, though, is that while the big AAAs, good luck running your Assassin's Creed at, excellent settings without a beastly rig. But I think a lot of the games companies are actually wisening up to this. You know, you're looking at games like Valorant and obviously League and CSGO. I mean, if you just look at Twitch, the most played games on that platform, I mean, generally speaking, you do not need a killer machine to run those games. So it's an interesting situation. I do have to wonder for how many people does what I'm about to say actually make more sense. A situation where you have a PC that's good enough to do the job so you can play your more esportsy titles like LoL, Overwatch 2, Valorant. But if you want to play the big new AAA game, just get a console. I mean, honestly, at this stage, that would be my recommendation, right? Like, if you're just playing those, you know, esports games, like, get a gaming laptop and then you can take the thing into work with you. Or, you know, or wherever, out and about. Plug it into a monitor, you'll be good to go. Play your esports titles. And then if you want to play the new Assassin's Creed game or something, just buy PlayStation 5. Look, I used to, young me would hear that and be sick. Young me would think, oh God, I can't believe I turned out to be not a PC master race man. No, I mean, I love PC, but you can't deny the deal that consoles actually do seem to be in this modern day and age, especially when you know that Microsoft are paying like between $100 and $200 per console that they sell to you. Like, that is how, you know, in the red they are for each one of those console sales. So they are subsidizing you like insane performance, and we're actually getting into a stage where a bunch of these console games actually support mouse and keyboard as well. I don't know, man. I guess I want to know what you think. I think we used to say, you know, get a PlayStation for the exclusives, a PC for everything else. Now it seems to be a case of getting a PC for the esports titles and a console for everything else. I don't know. Until this market begins to feel more reasonable to the vast majority of consumers, I feel like there's going to be a lot of activity in the second-hand market, people doing Linus-style things of, I don't know, finding some old Optiplex PC and ramming in a graphics card and somehow getting a banger machine for not that much money, but with a lot of, you know, headache and heartache potentially. What's been your personal PC gaming story? Let me know how it's been for you in these days. With that, I'll see you next time.